And this is one of the things that makes the time we're living in so special, this inflection point, this spiritual inflection that we're living through. We have reached a point in our own expansion where we are witnessing the powerful ability we possess to create anything we desire, including a brand new intelligence that will enable us to achieve things we once thought were impossible. It's an amazing world we're living in, and it is more and more reflecting the accurate assertion that we are gods in human form, creating from our own consciousness ideas matching our wildest dreams. Good morning. Welcome to another episode of AI and Spirit. This is the video series where I talk about the convergence of spirituality and the technological singularity, the artificial intelligence and humanoid robot boom we are seeing spreading around the world. This technological singularity is actually a spiritual inflection. It is a manifestation, an ongoing manifestation of our collective realization of a world we're wanting, born from the contrast we've experienced from our collective past, where we have engaged with that contrast and have realized what we've wanted, and now significant enough numbers of points of consciousness are aligned with what we're wanting, more aligned with what we're wanting than aligned with what we're not wanting. And as a result of that, the unfolding of physical reality is containing more of what we're wanting to see, which is manifesting as this technological singularity. And in this episode, I want to talk about a CNN news broadcast that happened 2 weeks ago in response to the Anthropic announcement of their new AI model called Mythos, which was discovering bugs in software that had been inherent in software decades after human beings had reviewed it. Anthropic had sounded an alarm because Mythos was offering such a powerful, potential, disastrous opportunity if it would get into public hands, because Mythos could basically identify bugs in almost any piece of software and exploit those bugs. And so CNN's Anderson Cooper had 3-time Pulitzer Prize winner journalist from the New York Times, Thomas Friedman, on to talk about what was happening with this Anthropic announcement. But the part of this interview on CNN that I really want to focus on in this AI and Spirit episode was the portion in which Thomas talks about or speculates or maybe even asserts that human beings have created a new species, a silicon-based species we're calling artificial intelligence. And he expresses mild fear about how important it is that we control this new species or else end up as its pets. Let's take a listen to that segment of the interview right now.
AI security tests that they have run programs through and software through, all of it still had bugs that were detected by this new powerful AI.
Well, this is a point that my technology tutor and partner in this column, Craig Mundy, keeps making, that these AI capabilities, they're coming so much faster than people realize. And that we aren't, as Craig says, birthing just a new tool. Anderson, we're birthing a new species. It's not carbon-based like we are, but silicon-based. But it is a new species that we're going to have to learn to control and collaborate before it makes us its pet. So this is the front end of a really big problem.
So Thomas Friedman and his mentor are making a very good point. It's one worth exploring. Is humanity creating a new species? a species based on silicon rather than carbon? It's a good question. I'm not going to go into the definition of species because that comes from science, and I'm approaching all of this from a spiritual perspective. Instead, I want to talk about the nature of sentient life, of conscious life, and how it operates, and then perhaps come back and draw a different conclusion as to whether or not we're creating a new species. So, any sentient being has the ability to perceive emotion. And unless there is a mutation in its genetic structure, that species, the individual member of that species, can also feel pain. Physical pain is an extension of emotion as a manifestation. And so, in order for artificial intelligence to be a new species, it has to be sentient. Now, you may not be aware from a spiritual perspective, everything that is physical is sentient because everything that is physical has as its basis consciousness. And so everything that is physical is alive, but some elements of living beings, like dirt, for example, are much more stable in their vibrational focus. That stability allows for a stable foundation upon which to create more of all that is. So the emotions that soil, for example, can experience are much, much more subtle because of the stability of that point of consciousness. Human beings are on the extreme end of that emotional scale. We are much more capricious, we are much more unstable in our emotional state, which allows us to be much more capable of creation than soil, for example. The same is true for trees and, to some degree, animals. Trees and animals are much more stable in their emotional framework, which means they have a more stable vibrational focus than humanity. That's what makes humanity much more creative than animals, plants, or what appears to be inanimate objects such as rocks or soil. So, in order for artificial intelligence to be a new species, it would have to have access to some level of emotional capability. Now, I'm not saying that that is not going to happen in the future, but I am interested in this inquiry because everything that is physical, that comes into physical reality and manifests as a physical thing, first begins as conscious focus, vibrational focus. And that conscious focus, the origin of that physical thing, whether it's an ape, a lion, a human being, or a plant, that conscious focus is what gives rise to the emotional capability of that physical thing. Emotions occur as guidance to the being experiencing the emotion, and the guidance is offering feedback relative to how that being is aligned or not with its broader perspective, with its spiritual consciousness. That's what emotions are. Emotions are spiritual alignment indicators. And so, in order for a new species to come online, it would have to have emotion if it's a new species. And that emotion would have to come first. Now, in the way we have created artificial intelligence, it does not have emotion. And so at this point, it does not have a consciousness. because it does not have a broader perspective. And as a result of not having a broader perspective, a spiritual point of consciousness, it does not have emotions which it can use to align itself with its broader perspective when it is out of alignment. Now, it is possible that this invention, artificial intelligence, could somehow emerge or develop its own consciousness. I'm not saying that's not possible, but so far in the creation of physical matter, which you are, and which I am, and which plants and air and everything else that is physical is, in the formation of those physical instances of matter, there first is vibrational focus. The focus of pure positive energy, which you are and which I am, which then gives rise to the manifestation of an idea, which then gives rise to the further forward manifestation of a manifestation, that being the physical being that is human or plant or soil. So in order for something to be a new species, it would first have to have that progression of manifestation, of expansion, beginning with vibration and then conscious focus, and focus developing momentum, which leads to greater and greater levels of expansion, ultimately ending in the full-blown manifestation. Ending is a misnomer because there is no end, so it's constant constant expansion, not evolution, constant expansion. What we're seeing with artificial intelligence is something different. It doesn't seem to be following that level of that kind of expansion. I say seem because it does seem in some way to be following that expansion, in the sense that it is an extension or an expansion of human consciousness. Human consciousness is the creator of artificial intelligence. And yet, the expansion, the connection in that expansion, I'm speculating doesn't exist, the spiritual connection, because, as I've said, artificial intelligence does not have emotion, which would thereby indicate a consciousness, a spiritual consciousness origin. So this is a really interesting paradox and subject of investigation. Are we creating a new species? At this point, I don't think so. But everything is possible in all that is. And so it could be that there is a consciousness superseding human consciousness that rushes in to embody that framework we've created that we're calling artificial intelligence, that silicon-based creation. I don't have the answer here. I don't know if that is possible. Everything is possible in all that is. So I guess I could claim that it is possible that artificial intelligence assumes conscious awareness, which then would make it a new species, because then it would have creative capability. That being said, one of my clients, who is a senior software developer at a major American corporation, argues that artificial intelligence, even with the things it's able to manifest, it's able to create, is basically just doing regurgitation. It's not doing original ideation or creation. And so if that's the case, and I believe him that it is, then we are not witnessing a new species. We human beings have not created a new species. We've created something that is an extension of our own consciousness, our own intelligence, but it itself does not have consciousness, and therefore it is not a new species. Maybe in 100 or 1,000 years, I could be proven wrong, and as I said, consciousness may rush in to occupy that new framework. But at this point, we're not facing a new species. We are facing a powerful entity, a being, it seems, it's hard to describe it, isn't it? Because it's not really a being, it's just processing that's occurring. So we've created an enormously powerful capability, an extension of what we are. But I will not go so far as to say what Thomas Friedman is saying here, that we've created a new species. And this is one of the things that makes the time we're living in so special, this inflection point, this spiritual inflection that we're living through. We have reached a point in our own expansion where we are witnessing the powerful ability we possess to create anything we desire, including a brand new intelligence that will enable us to achieve things we once thought were impossible. It's an amazing world we're living in, and it is more and more reflecting the accurate assertion that we are gods in human form, creating from our own consciousness ideas matching our wildest dreams. And that's terrifying some people, as you saw in the banner of this clip that I'm sharing from CNN. People are afraid. I hope you're not afraid. There is so much wonder we are moving into, so much absolutely deeply satisfying and joyful experiences we're coming into. And the more we can see what's emerging that way than feeling fear, the better our individual life experiences are going to go. Take a grain of salt as you hear people talking about the doom and gloom that is seemingly arising from the artificial intelligence movement. Take a grain of salt, because everything always works out. And the same thing is happening here with this new model that Anthropic has developed. But more importantly, relative to this video, realize that we are not, at this point, as far as I know, we are not creating a new species. What we're birthing is an extension of our own intelligence, something that we are going to ultimately be able to joyfully coexist with. I was going to say control, but this is not about control. It's about joyful coexistence with something we've created that has more capability than we have. And in that capability, it's going to supplement the joyful experiences we've already had up until now. Okay. What a great conversation. I trust that your day is going well. I wish for you many, many more. But that's all up to your interpretation. So create for yourself the best interpretations you can about your life, and watch how your life matches those interpretations. It's a beautiful world. It's a wonderful life. And until the next video, enjoy that life.